Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're talking about a huge breakthrough in the fight against cancer. And it's not about some new miracle drug. It's actually about a whole new way of thinking. It turns out that for our most complex medicines, how you build them is just as important as what's inside. It's all about architecture.
Okay, let's dive right into the heart of the problem that scientists are tackling here. For years, we've had these incredibly effective vaccines against the human papillomavirus, or HPV. They're great at preventing infections. But what about the people who already have tumors caused by HPV? That's where we need a treatment, not a preventative, and that's where the picture gets a whole lot more complicated.
So, this brings us to our first big point. Let's really unpack why treating these existing cancers has been such a critical and, honestly, such a stubborn medical challenge.
Right, so here's the bottom line. Those preventative vaccines we have, they do absolutely nothing for someone who already has a tumor. And to make things worse, the number of these cancers, especially in the head and neck, is actually going up. Patients are often diagnosed late, and then they have to face these incredibly toxic treatments. It's created this huge gap, a really desperate need for a therapeutic vaccine, one that doesn't just prevent the disease, but actively treats the cancer.
Now, this is where the story takes a really brilliant turn. A group of researchers at Northwestern University started thinking less like chemists and a lot more like architects. They began to ask a fascinating question. What if all the past failures of therapeutic vaccines weren't about the ingredients? What if it was all about the blueprint?
And that perspective is really the heart of this emerging field called structural nanomedicine. The main idea is actually pretty simple. You don't just throw ingredients into a bowl and mix. No, you deliberately and carefully arrange every single component at the molecular level to build the most powerful, most effective structure you possibly can.
And I love this slide because it shows that shift in thinking so clearly. The lead scientist on this study calls the old method the blender approach. You just mix everything together and kind of hope for the best. But the new method? That's the architect's approach, designing with purpose, where every single placement, every connection matters.
So, to prove that this whole architectural approach really works, the team set up this beautiful, really elegant experiment, basically a head-to-head competition between 3 different vaccine designs.
They built these 3 potential vaccines on a platform called spherical nucleic acids, or SNAs. And here is the absolute key to this whole experiment. Every single one was made from the exact same 3 ingredients. You've got the core structure, you've got something called an adjuvant, which is like a red flag to wake up the immune system, and then you have the antigen, which is basically a little piece of the HPV virus that acts like a mugshot to teach the immune system what to hunt down.
Okay, so in the first design, they took that viral mugshot, the antigen, and they just tucked it away, burying it deep inside the nanoparticle's core.
For design number 2, they moved that antigen to the outside surface so it was clearly visible to the immune system. They attached it by one of its molecular ends, which is known as the C-terminus.
And then for the third and final design, they made only one tiny change. They kept the antigen on the surface, but they just flipped it around, attaching it by its opposite end, the N-terminus. And that's it. Same parts, same location on the surface, just a different orientation. Crazy, right?
So how much of a difference could that one tiny molecular flip possibly make? Well, let's look at the results because the difference wasn't just big, it was colossal.
The results weren't just clear, they were dramatic. As you can see right here in this chart, which is measuring a key immune-boosting protein, the third design, the one attached by the N-terminus, just blew the others out of the water. It generated a way more powerful and robust immune response.
And this number really shows you just how big that difference was. This winning design triggered an 8-fold increase in the secretion of interferon gamma, and that protein is absolutely crucial for activating the killer T cells that hunt down and destroy tumors.
So more immune signals are great, but did it actually translate to, killing cancer? Oh, absolutely. That 8x signal boost resulted in 2.5 times more cytotoxicity, that's the scientific term for tumor-killing power, when they tested it directly against human cancer cells.
And then, in the final test, in preclinical mouse models, this architect-designed vaccine really delivered. It slashed the size of tumors by more than 3-fold and significantly extended survival. I mean, think about that. All of that just because of how one tiny molecule was oriented.
So what does this one amazing experiment mean for the future? Well, this is about so much more than a single HPV vaccine. This could be a genuine paradigm shift.
I think the most profound takeaway here
is that we now have a new blueprint. We can literally look back at the graveyard of promising drugs that failed in clinical trials and ask a totally new question. Did they fail because the ingredients were wrong, or were they just built incorrectly?
You know, the study's lead author, Dr. Chad Merkin, he summed it up perfectly. This isn't about random chance anymore. It's about having the tools to deliberately design and build better, safer, and more powerful medicines, one molecule at a time.
And that leaves us with a really exciting question to think about. If architecture is this important, how many other potential cures are just sitting on a shelf somewhere, waiting for someone to come along and rebuild them the right way?